Good day. Welcome to Westchester Talk Radio, westchestertalkradio.com. I'm John Marino, and we are produced by Sharc Creative, made possible by Robeson Oil, the house that service built, by Hightower Westchester, managing your wealth through a fiduciary standard, by Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, and also by Jaguar Land Rover of New Rochelle, White Plains, and Mount Kisco. We welcome Jaguar Land Rover of New Rochelle, White Plains, and Mount Kisco to Westchester Talk Radio. We are joined by John Bailey. John Bailey, the editor, and also the man who puts together the publisher of White Plains CitizeNet Reporter, WPCNR.com, host of White Plains Week and People to be Heard on your cable system all around Westchester, places like Altice and also Fios and other cable systems around Westchester too. John Bailey, we welcome you back to Westchester Talk Radio on the beat in Westchester. It's been quite a beat the past few weeks. The beat we are waiting for is for all the I's to be dotted, all the T's to be crossed on the state budget. And that beat seems to be, it's kind of like having the drumstick halfway up in the air and you can't pound that drumstick down. That's not happening as of yet. The drummer is stuck in midair with his drumstick.
Yeah. Well, actually, if they are actually thinking of getting it done within the next week, that surprises me. But considering the chaos that has enveloped Albany and the need for more aid, and it's just and also the COVID policy. Nobody's talking COVID policy up there at all.
Nobody talks COVID anymore. Much, it seems.
No.
If we are.
Oh no, it's all gone away.
It's gone away, yet we see,
Right.
Who was it that I see? Matthew Broderick, I guess, who's on Broadway now, came down with COVID yesterday. So it may have gone away for some, not for others.
Oh, well, those people in the box seats have got a problem.
Those contacts.
Terrible.
Yep.
That's terrible. But, it's very, very concerning. And you'd think the legislature would address some concern about it. But no, they just want the recovery to proceed and everything will be normal again.
Everything we know is not hunky-dory at the moment. Are the numbers again going up in Westchester?
They certainly are. Last week we had, about one, let me draw it up on my, it was up all last week. It's been up 2 out of the last 4 weeks, 2 weeks in a row. And we're averaging about 139 a day. And it's up again the first 2 days of this week.
All right. So this is because of the BA2 variant.
Westchester,
right?
Westchester alone.
Right. So we are moving back again in the wrong direction. I know health officials are concerned that once we get to the fall again, what will happen? Will we have another new variant by then? Will an old variant come back? Will the last 2 autumns return to our way of life and inhibit our way of life again come this fall and autumn as well? But first, we have the summer to deal with, and BA2 is here in springtime. Makes us wonder what this summer might be like, too.
It'll be just like last summer. They're going to have more parks open for more people. So far they have listed absolutely no restrictions, none. And what happened was that everything was very quiet in May and June, but was slowly going up. And then in July, we had that big 4th of July weekend, and within 2 weeks, it started spread throughout August, spread more after Labor Day, and then slowly built up through October. And then in December, after the Thanksgiving and the holidays in December, boom, we had our largest number of COVID infections ever. And in fact, the 1,000 almost 1,100 infections we had last week in Westchester County alone. That is equal to our highest number of COVID infections before that third wave last January. That was equal to.
So
remember when we hit 26,000?
Right.
Ooh.
Yep.
Next day. And so my feeling is
there was a point where it seemed like half
ourselves.
the people I knew had COVID at that point. So not too long ago. What's the masking story around the county now? Must we wear a mask indoors? Let's say we go shopping to a ShopRite or a Stop.
I'm not seeing it. I mean,
I'm not seeing it as much as before.
I'm not seeing masking much at all.
I went to a Shiva in Mamaroneck a couple of days ago, and I hadn't been up that way around Boston Road and Route 1, etc., Boston Post Road in a while. So I went into a few of the establishments up and down Route 1 in Mamaroneck, and it seemed like nobody had a mask on in these places except me, as it turned out. And I was wondering, did mask requirements go away totally at this point? Because they do seem to change from time to time, or the way they are interpreted by different businesses seems to change. And most of all, by people, they are interpreted differently. I think everybody's at the point where we want to rip the mask off, and it may not be the best thing to do yet.
No, Mayor Adams, as it reinstated masking for under fives,
right,
aren't vaccinated in the New York public schools. Really good move by him, because New York City is moving along with infections. And let me just see, I can tell you, New York City at 1,025 infections, all 5 boroughs on the 4th. And that is, and before that they had, let's see, they had, let's see, 500, and it's going up, and Nassau and Suffolk slowly going up, but the only county that's going up is Westchester in our Mid-Hudson region. Steady.
And it seemed like last time around when Omicron came, the Mid-Hudson Valley really got hit hard, and more open areas like Dutchess and Orange County at that time seemed to be the hardest hit, which was surprising because, like I said, those areas are a bit more wide open. Even in winter, it's tougher to come in contact and to move closer into people when you're somewhere up there in Dutchess and Orange. But Omicron is Omicron, COVID is COVID, and BA2 is BA2 now, and we do have to obviously be as cautious, I think, and I know you think too, still as possible, which leads to the question of you and I can go get a 4th vaccine. Now, I was out in Lee Zeldin country on Long Island last night, and a good friend of mine out there who is in our age group, right in that 65-ish age group, I know he had COVID a few months ago. He is boosted, and he said he was online doing something a couple of days ago, and his daughter-in-law kind of bumped him out of the way, brought up a website and said, okay, you're scheduled for your 2nd booster shot. So he said, okay, now may I go back to doing what I was doing? But he was happy and glad she did that for him. So I said, how many boosts are you willing to take? He said, as many as necessary, as many as needed. And he's never had a reaction to it. Different people have had different reactions to being shot up with COVID vaccines, with being boosted. Is this the reason why it seems like the push so far for the 2nd booster shot is not where I thought it would be? I thought we'd see ads all over and politicians all over saying, go get that 2nd booster shot. It seems
they're not doing anything.
More like it's there if you want it. We're not going to push it.
The state is washing its hands, and this is wrong. They're the leaders. They have to proselytize, but they're not. And the worst thing is they closed the vaccination center at the county center this week. Why would you do that? It's
especially if we need a 2nd booster, or if you do want to give that out.
This is. I cannot believe Shirley Amler agreed with that. County health department commissioner. But on the other hand, what we are seeing now is a lot of positive news, how our cases are way less than they were months ago. Well, this is the wrong perspective. You have to look at what is happening now and what could happen. And it makes people feel good, but it gives them a bad message.
I guess to me, it's kind of like when people say, well, crime is going up, but it's not anything like it was in the 90s or the 80s.
Absolutely.
Well,
yes,
for a
all
crime
those shootings,
victim,
they don't matter.
It's happening right now.
Yes.
So I don't think they care about what happened 30 and 40 years ago. Same thing with COVID and the numbers going up and down the way they have been. If you didn't have COVID, or if you're getting COVID now, whether or not you had it before, if somebody had it a couple of years ago and they're okay now, that's great. But for me right now, if I have it, that's not so good.
I don't. It's not good to get sick at any time, and with this, you don't know how it's going to affect you long term. There's been a lot written about Mara Gay, the New York Times reporter, shared this on a White Plains Library Zoom, and she is saying that she still has cognition issues, thinking issues. It affected her deeply, and she was like in her mid-30s.
So she is right. So she's suffering from what they call long COVID, which still, as we research into the effects of long COVID, nobody really knows how long the COVID might last within you. That depends upon the person. And
I don't even want to get short COVID.
Right. Who would want to get even COVID for a few seconds? Now, that friend out there in the Hamptons last night did have COVID, like I said, a few months ago. He was asymptomatic. He had no problems with it. He is in his mid-60s, but that's just him. Like we've talked about before, we've seen star athletes come down with COVID and feel the effects of that for months. And these are the most physically fit people in the world. If this can affect them for 3 months, 6 months, a year, where it's not totally out of their system, imagine what it can do to somebody who's not so fit.
And it's amazing how professional athletes are getting a free pass not to get vaccinated. This is irresponsible of the city leaderships that are okaying this, and
I think it's all about baseball.
I dread the baseball season. I think
that's what it is. It's all about baseball. The Nets, Kyrie Irving. Well, we feel sorry for you, Kyrie, but these are the rules. But baseball, Aaron Judge, Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer. Hey, and we don't even know if Judge and deGrom are vaccinated. Scherzer is. But it's baseball time. That's the biggest straw here in New York City. So you know what, guys? You can play.
Yes, exactly. This is irresponsible of Mr. Judge.
I think the strangest thing of all is to allow players from other places around this country to come in here who have not been vaccinated. Yet they can come here and play. And those here who are not vaccinated cannot play. Well, tell the guys who are coming here from someplace else who don't have a vaccine to go get a vaccine. Like they told Kyrie Irving, and I must say I'm a Knicks fan, not a Nets fan, but I understand where Kyrie Irving was coming from, that if you're going to tell me I can't play, well, tell somebody else who's not vaccinated on Toronto or the Lakers or whatever team it might be coming in. If they have unvaccinated players, tell them go get a vaccine too. Otherwise, tell them they can't play. They can. I'll get them. I'll buy them a seat and come and watch the game with me in the stands.
You come to the heart of the matter. Either everybody has to get vaccinated as a matter of law, which Congress didn't have the guts to pass because they wanted everybody to be like them. But that's what needed to be done, because if you wouldn't have the spreading that's going out in the Middle West. You wouldn't have it. And you don't have the right to infect other people. And in fact, I think, John, that this whole business of Westchester getting reinfected is due to the fact that a lot of people are walking around breathing the COVID virus out of their nose, but it hasn't affected them seriously. But they're carrying the germs, breathing in and breathing in other people's faces and spreading it that way. Why? Because the testing numbers are so low, because it's now voluntary testing. Nobody does that. But you can take a road test, but it's voluntary. We trust that you can drive.
Here's the thing about voluntary testing, and I haven't done that to myself. I did ask a health official how this works, basically. And when that health official described the procedure, I said, you talk like that about how this has to be done. I would certainly prefer to go get a professional test me because of the potential damage the average Joe can do to himself, or the average Jane to herself, by self-testing the way it has to be done and done the right way. And oh, by the way, after you get that swab, you have to do this and have to do that. And that's for a medical professional, to me, not a person. So how accurate can we rely upon those numbers of those who are self-testing to be too?
You can. I mean, the numbers on these low numbers in Westchester of tests. I mean, let's see, Sunday we tested 3,000 people and 117 were positive. That's 3.9%.
I'd like to see what the numbers are if you take 3,000 who self-tested only, compare those numbers against 3,000 who went to a medical facility to be tested by a professional. Compare those numbers, and I think that tells you right where we are at.
This voluntary testing thing is one of the dumbest things I've ever heard in policy on something that's serious. I'm afraid to do things like that.
I would never do that unless I had to, unless I had no choice, unless somebody said, you can't come out of your house. This is the only way to give us some kind of a read. If that were the case, then I would have to. But outside of that, if I suspected anything, or when I had a medical procedure a little over a year ago, I made sure I had a professional test me before I had that procedure. I think that's the right way to go. You know, John Bailey, also too, the gerrymandering up in Albany that happened with our congressional districts a few months ago. Now a judge has thrown that out. The Republicans went to court to get it thrown out. A judge threw that out. It's being appealed. Are our primaries in June in danger of not happening in June and being pushed back to July, to August?
Well, it depends.
Drop dead date where it has to be done by, where those primaries have to be held and conducted by.
Well, it all depends on what this fourth appellate judge who put in a stay decides. He's going to hear an argument on it, and he's going to announce when he's going to have the argument on the whole issue Thursday. And
now I know one side of the issue says, and this would be the defense side, would basically say we did everything the way we are supposed to do it.
No, they didn't. According to the judge's ruling, they did not even present it. They just put it out.
Right. They claim that, I believe they're going to claim that they needed a report and they did not get that report on time. They had a certain deadline at that point. What were we supposed to do? So we moved forward doing what we thought was right at that time. This is kind of what I'm hearing.
Well, that is interesting, but you notice that nobody made any statements all weekend long about this whole thing. Mm-hmm. And they are the first to open their mouths. I mean, Schumer gives us $2 million for radios yesterday. Please, how about $2 million for aggressive technological speed enforcement around this county on our parkways? Not being done. And that's what I mean. Puts out this huge press release. Get $2 million for radios, please.
Will Andrew Cuomo run for governor? He seems to be on that Rebuild My Image tour. And I think he was 50-50, word coming down in the last few days. Not official, but he's likely not going to run, but just kind of throwing jabs out there at those he thinks did him wrong. But yet, I guess like Tiger Woods waiting till the last second to play in the Masters. Now he says, yes, I will play. We waited for it. We expected it. I think Andy is going to let it go down to the wire. What do you think?
Well, I think Andrew Cuomo, friend of mine who apparently who does commentary for me on my website, he feels that Cuomo will wait till the last minute, start another party, and throw a monkey wrench.
That's what I'm thinking too. That
primary.
if he's going to run, he is going
thinking.
to form another party and run. He's done it before, forming another party back in 2014.
That he splits Hochul's vote and the Republicans get in.
Which I think is kind of like the Donald Trump trick after he lost the election in Georgia, saying, well, it was rigged, don't come out and vote. And what did Georgia get? 2 Democratic senators that way. And I think Donald Trump, in his own way, wanted it to play out like that to kind of stick those he thought that stuck him in Georgia, right or wrong. And I think, remember, these 2 guys come from the same neighborhood, Donald Trump and Andrew Cuomo. I think they learned the same tricks of the trade on the streets of Queens. And this is kind of like what I see Andrew Cuomo doing here. Go form a third party. He splits the vote with Kathy Hochul, and Lee Zeldin or Andrew Giuliani or Rob Astorino or Harry Wilson or George Pataki, maybe if he does decide to run again, winds up governor instead. And to a Donald Trump or an Andrew Cuomo off the streets, this is kind of, I think, the ultimate revenge.
Yes. Well, revenge or not, I really feel that the state is in serious trouble because Ms. Hochul could very well be thrown under the bus savagely in the primaries and lose it if she's challenged. And the Republicans have been handed an absolute killer issue by the Democrats, and that's this gerrymandering thing. And my big question in mind, why the Democrats were ruling this state for the last 4 to 5 years. They did everything right for COVID, and then they got greedy. Why did they gerrymander the Jamal Bowman district? Why did they gerrymander the Mondaire Jones district? It was so undemocratic. They made the districts heavily white when they gerrymandered. What was that? Did they not like Black persons getting to represent districts where there's a majority and minority?
Yeah, I think it was more about actually the machine, because the redistricting cut out a number of Republicans, seemingly, and it cuts out the Jamal Bowmans, I think, no doubt, and Mondaire Jones to some extent, too. I think it's more about ideologies, what it comes down to, and that the machine is showing both sides, the Republicans and in-house amongst the Democrats, that, hey, we still run things. If we can get away with doing this, we don't care if you're a Republican, a Democrat, a right-to-lifer, whatever you might be.
You got to think our way. That's what they're saying.
Think our way. We
run our way. You do what
I allow
say.
You to do certain things, and if you are not doing those certain things, we'll get rid of you. We don't care if you wear blue or red.
Yeah, no one has made a statement as to why they did this in the first place. But
they'll claim that
people have written about
the electorate.
I have.
Maybe their own electorate get themselves reelected, but outside of that, it's not representing people the way they are geographically on a map. Rob Astorino, the former county executive here in Westchester, running for governor again. He was the Republican candidate back in 2014. Now, this entire controversy about Leah Thomas at the University of Pennsylvania, the male swimmer who was transitioned over into becoming a woman, seemingly by taking hormones for a year or more and setting all kinds of NCAA and school at University of Pennsylvania swimming records too, and winning all these competitions that would somebody who was born as a woman would be winning instead. Rob Astorino asking Governor Kathy Hochul to join with him in protecting the rights of women and girls, high school girls and women, collegiate athletes in sports.
Well, when he first came out with that, and I watched it, and I was struck by it that no one has noticed this except Bob Astorino.
I think a lot of people have noticed it and don't want to touch this.
Nobody has touched it. Not the sports pages. Not the
Look
sports
at Ketanji Jackson in front of the Senate. What's a woman? I know I'm a woman. I know Senator Blackburn is a woman. I know my mother is a woman, and outside of that, she basically refused to comment. That's how much of a touchy issue this is.
Yes, well, here's the situation. I can very well say you're cut from your high school basketball team, or say, and you decide to change your gender. You go back after I don't know how long it takes to do that, and then you make the women's team.
Michael Jordan,
because you're taller, you're taller, more bigger, you have more muscle, and then you go to play in the WNBA, making much bigger money as a professional because you're a transgender. I mean,
keep this in mind about what you said. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team, as have other notables along the way. They were too. Now, if the ability to do this existed back then more than 40 years ago, what might have happened if there were WNBA back then too?
No.
Would Michael Jordan have maybe, transitioned into becoming a woman and played in the WNBA instead? It opens up
that's what the swimmer did.
Box and seemingly like off the wall questions, and yet you got to think about it because
scholarships are lost. Scholarships are lost. The ability to go to a college and play women's basketball on a competitive level. Any women's
sport, lacrosse, soccer, basketball, swimming, softball.
Soccer, particularly.
Soccer, without a doubt. You name it. What's to prevent somebody from right before, a guy from right before a competition on the women's side, he thinks he can win, saying, well, I'm a woman now. Goes out, wins that competition, and then after the competition says, I'm a guy again. What do? Take the award away? There's just too much here with that going on.
They don't do that anymore. They didn't take away the World Series championship, the pennant of the New York Giants when it was discovered emphatically that they cheated for half the season. Baseball didn't do anything about that. I thought that was wrong. That should have been expunged from the records. And all the records from that year eliminated. But
1989, I first came to the sports world in Westchester. I was already for a couple of years working at WFAS Radio in White Plains, the old 1230 AM and 103.9 FM. And in 1989, I became the sports director of the two stations. And with that, I became a member of the weekly Con Edison Sports Award Committee, which exists till this day, has existed since the early 1950s in Westchester. Deacon Jones of White Plains, the first Con Ed winner back in 1951, I guess it was. And I was on and involved with the committee for more than 20 years, starting in 1989, being at those weekly luncheons and sometimes being part of the committee that would select the student athlete of the week in Westchester. And for the first 10 years, when I would go to the luncheons every Wednesday, first at the Cabin in Valhalla, and then over at Casarina in Thornwood after that. And Casarina was the hosting place for many years, since 2006, until COVID hit and everything went online, basically, until this day. These meetings are being conducted. And Con Edison, of course, over at Theodore Fremd Avenue in Rye, the sponsor of that for so many years since the beginning. 1989, I learned what Title IX was, to protect women in sports, which was first instituted in 1972. For the first 10 years, I'd say, every Wednesday at the luncheon from 89 to 99, Title IX came up somewhere. So seeing what's going on now with all of this makes me say everything we talked about and everything we did in those years and have done since then, really since 1972, since the real trailblazers started to do 50 years ago. What do we do now? Throw all of this out the window and tell women, well, you didn't matter anyway. You were like a good political talking point for half a century. And now we got a better one. And let's have guys who think they're a woman swim in the pool instead, or jump for a rebound against the Ursuline girls team instead. Or get a scholarship instead of
wonder
a top high school athlete.
They're cheating, basically, is what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
They're cheating.
They're cheating is what it comes down to.
It has to be shown to be cheating.
Right.
And
intentionally shown to be cheating, which
and
that's
you have to
difficult
prove that you.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a real legal nightmare.
Talking about cheating, I've seen this online where somebody took a Wheaties box, put Leah Thomas's head on it, and redubbed the box Cheaties instead of Wheaties.
Well, it's Astorino. I commend him for absolutely twigging to this fact because nobody else is. I didn't realize it, but it is. But I want to just really touch on this gerrymandering thing once more. Before I go. And the thing is, I have to wonder, why did the Democrats even do that? They didn't have to. They have shot themselves in the foot. They will probably lose the state because of it. They'll lose their majorities because the Republicans right now, I'm telling you, are preparing a lot of ads to slam the Democrats for. They say we cheat gerrymandering. Well, they do it too. They're just like everybody. I don't know if that's the line, but you know they're gonna do
they have said
really
that
bad
the
ones.
Republicans do it, and they've given examples of that. I think that was part of what they did, but I do think the other half was to try to get rid of the Mondare Joneses and Jamal Bowmans of the world and send a message that you still play our game because we run things. But yet that's why a Jamal Bowman or an AOC got elected originally a few years back, especially.
They're disrespecting the voters.
Joe Crowley, who was, seemed to be part of the machine for decades and a long time, and he got bumped out by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez,
You have these,
who, of course, grew up in Yorktown Somers and attended Yorktown High School. Little known fact about
You will have these long-time Democratic hacks that were defeated, who did very little for their districts, and just hung out and enjoyed the perks of being a congressman or whatever.
I tell people in those districts,
got tired of being told that I'm only here because I'm being primaried. What a stupid comment that was. Never let the people know you think they're stupid. Right. Or as I would tell people in those districts, things changed because those in power were throwing you crumbs. They were going home having the champagne and the caviar, and enough people noticed that and said, let's make a change. They did. And fear crept into many people who are in the state legislature. This could be done to them. We can't let these upstart crows come in here. They don't understand politics. They don't understand how the game is played. Well, the electorate does understand when you do it. We have a runner on second base in extra innings in baseball. The rules changed, right? Well, sometimes the rules change. And a couple of years ago, the progressive wing of the party changed the rules a bit. And those in power want to take that runner off second base now. It may work in baseball. I agree with it there. But when it comes to politics, it's about the people and what they want. That's all it comes down to. Right. They want to be considered important. And when you just tell them flat out that I don't care what you think, because when you treat them like jerks anyway, and you show that and they see that, well, guess what? They'll go find somebody else who treats they will vote J. Fred Muggs in. Right, because that's how you get rid of a lousy congressman. And they may not agree totally with the new person who's coming in, but they're willing to give that new person a chance because of the way they were disrespected by the powers that be for such a long time. John Bailey. Well, the senators and the congressmen down in Washington have now sort of isolated the progressives and have poo-pooed them, disrespected them, women, men. They've disrespected them. That's wrong. It's all about the machine. John Bailey, the first black woman appointed to senior criminal investigator in Westchester. You've covered that on WPCNR, White Plains CitizenNet Reporter, of which you are the publisher and editor, and for which you are also the host of.
TV programs, White Plains Week and People to be heard weekly on cable systems around Westchester, including also places like Altice and Fios.
Yes, they. We were
So
very
first
happy
woman,
that
first black woman appointed to senior criminal investigator in Westchester. We will get soon our first black woman Supreme Court justice, and it seems like locally we're catching up to federally.
You know, Mimi Rocha is doing, I think, a very credible job in really paying attention to how that department, the district attorney's office, works, what they prosecute, and none of her press releases are nonsense. They always make a good statement, and she only puts out something when it's really important. And she's doing what she said she would do, something most politicians never do.
Like when we say we stand with Ukraine, and then we don't do much to help the Ukrainians out. But that's another story we've talked about.
No, we stand with Ukraine because we're watching you die on TV.
We stand from here with Ukraine and watch people die across the pond. And like I said, without getting totally into that, I guess not
profoundly awful
as we likely should, which we've talked about before. Right. And I think, you know, everything's pretty much at a stalemate there between Russia and Ukraine. And I think diplomatically, we're at a stalemate with this issue and this situation, too. The question is, what's the next shoe to drop? Are the Russians, with their pullback, just kind of recanvassing and resupplying their troops? Will they go back in, or will something be done at the negotiating table now? Because we are at that point where something has to get done. A ceasefire has to happen, or maybe we do have to step it up more and help the Ukrainians more to bring this conflict to an end. Also, too, locally,
Russia is just the Russian type people are not really aware that this is.
No, I think the Russians amongst their own people have done a great job in misdirecting and miseducating and lying to their people about what's gone on. And unfortunately, not enough Russians within the nation, the borders geographically of Russia, know for real what's happening. And hopefully we can find a way to let the people know much better about what really is going on.
And this is why I don't know what the Voice of America is doing.
Yeah, I'm wondering about things like that.
But I mean, this would be very good.
Yep.
We
radio,
have the TV of America,
like that. But, John Bailey, locally,
nothing I can do about it. It's very frustrating. A cloud lingers over every decent person's head. Not that I'm always decent, but I mean, the thing is, I couldn't conceive of a person ruling a nation like that, making these horrifying decisions and living with this horror every day.
He is the Hitler of today, 80 years later. I don't think there's any question about that. He's doing the exact same things that Adolf Hitler did, whether it was to Jews or to Gypsies or ethnic Poles and Ukrainians and Russians back then. Now we have the Russians doing it to the Ukrainians and all the other ethnicities. There are over 100 in Ukraine today. Now, in White Plains and on Central Avenue, according to White Plains Police, there are distraction larcenies going on in parking lots along Central Avenue. What is a distraction larceny?
Well, what happens is the people being targeted along the parking lots on Central Avenue are. So they come back to a car with groceries, and a bystander comes up and points out something that might be wrong with their car that they noticed, like a low tire pressure, i.e., you let out air personally and then point to it. And then that person engages the owner of the car after she has put her groceries or whatever she's purchased into the car, and a accomplice opens the door and steals it.
Wow.
And isn't seen. That's
I guess, an updated form of carjacking.
Yes, yes, with leaving the car and the person basically unthreatened. And I don't know how it really plays out. I think what the idea is come on, I know someone, and we'll get a tow truck, and then
Right.
but leave the car unlocked so the tow truck. There's all sorts of ploys that can be done, and
Right. Yeah, I've seen the last
women
few
should
years
be where
when I
they
had a car a few
targets.
years ago. I had a bump in it. Cars would pull up to me and say, "Hey, buddy, I can fix that for you." To which I'd say, "No, thanks. It's why I have insurance." So,
yes.
Yeah. Have there been
That's
any
right.
reports of injuries with this happening, with this new phenomenon? No.
No, this was just something posted on Facebook by the White Plains Police. I'm really behind the times. I don't go to Facebook for my news, and the city didn't put it out on their website, but it was put out on Facebook, which I have a real problem with. Too many people get their news from Facebook, particularly in the neighborhoods of the cities, and you get all sorts of rumors flying around, and they don't know the facts, and they like to invent and embellish what they see.
Now, I know you don't get your news from Facebook or any other social media outlet about the French-American School of New York. FASNY, you've got the facts on that. What's the latest on this long-running, I guess, 12 years now, court case going on in Rye Plains?
It has quietly died. What has
quietly
happened?
Died.
Yes, the appellate court in Brooklyn was going to set a date for hearing the arguments of FASNY and White Plains against the Kidney Association. However, the place was sold. And
it was sold.
That's right. FASNY sold the property to a developer. Now, the developer has not come in with a plan yet, but it was contention of Mr. Seidel, the lawyer for the Kidney Association, and his fellow attorney, that it's sold. It is a moot issue. There's no reason to go forward with the suit.
Might this be challenged in court from this angle now? Can the sale be challenged?
I would have no idea, but the problem would be that FASNY did own the property. They have a right to sell it, and so they did sell it. The main problem is that the persons that wanted to continue with the suit, regardless of the fact of whether it was moot, they wanted to declare the whole idea of conveyance of a previous restriction on the property to a next sale and what you do with the property. Now that may come up again if the developer wants to do something that is outside the zoning, which calls for housing. You can put up houses on that property.
Right. So could the other side come back and say and go to court? And I'm sure if they wanted to, they could probably find a lawyer to do this and claim in a court that, well, look, FASNY and their people sold that property to get out of what's going on with us.
Well, the problem here,
if I were a lawyer, I'd take that case.
It's a very important thing, whether a covenant done almost 100 years ago still applies to the property.
Right.
Or whether the city or the owner can say, no, that was done 100 years ago when everybody traveled by railroad.
Right.
And
it's like the Second Amendment, and those who say that today,
now,
what was written in the Second Amendment in the late 1700s doesn't apply today because we're not shooting with muskets anymore. It's the same idea. What was written 100 years ago, well, we had trolleys back then. We didn't have, say, SUVs.
Yes. If the Republicans were looking at this, they would say, yes, the covenant applies in 1925.
Right.
And that's what the Kidney Association's objections were, that you can't put up an institution on the property, institution being ill-defined.
Right.
But what can I say? It's over 11 years later.
Will we have Rye Playland this summer of 2022?
Yes, we will if they finish it. I mean,
we could have Playland without everything being finished.
Well, you're going to. I mean, the county executive Latimer actually said that probably everything wouldn't be finished. I'm paraphrasing the quote. But the problem was they bungled this whole thing. They had to change contractors for some reason. That's been never explained. And then the new contractor comes in, and they started right after Playland closed. They've had, let's see, 4 and 3, at least 7 or 8 months. And I'd say they're only about 25 to 30% done.
Mm-hmm. So while we're getting turned upside down on a ride this summer at Rye Playland, we could watch the work go on upside down too.
Now, of course, if they gave progress reports on Playland in a factual manner, then I wouldn't be saying that it's a mess. But go down, look at it. I've shown pictures. Everybody, I mean, the pool is not finished yet. The pool, who knew? The pool is now not a recreational sports pool at all. It's a family pool. We didn't know they were going to do that. We thought we were just going to expand the pool and make it double use. But they never told us that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, they don't tell us what we need to know.
Didn't they change the contractor on this like back in December?
Well, they originally agreed with Standard Amusements to settle. They had to agree to take care of the pool. Standard Amusements was going to do that. Standard Amusements has come up with a much better deal because they don't have to invest $50 or $60 million, which was what they were originally going to invest, as I recall. The county, though, has to invest $125 million of taxpayer money.
Where is Peter Stuyvesant when we need him to cut a good deal?
Well, look, that's just what's happening. I mean, when Mr. Astorino made the original deal, it was only going to cost the county, I believe, $30 million.
But we know what we hear on day one.
Now it's going to cost us $525. Yeah. This is what happens when you try and take on the big boys. You never take a hedge fund to court because why? They are called a hedge fund.
Right.
They know how to hedge.
People to lose is what they do. So, John Bailey, you're the ultimate winner here around Westchester, and everybody knows that. We thank you for joining us here.
It's very kind of you to say so. And so for those politicians in Albany I've offended today, that gerrymandering thing, you deserve it, because that was one of the stupidest things you could have done. And every Democrat has been criticizing Republican gerrymandering in Texas and all across the country, and you do it, shame on you. That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen New York State do in some time.
John Bailey on the beat in Westchester, and John Bailey is the publisher and editor of Plains CitizeNet Reporter, WPCNR.com, and he is also the host of White Plains Weekend. People to be heard on cable TV systems around Westchester, including Altice and Fios too. John Bailey, we thank you, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Much appreciated. Here on Westchester Talk Radio, I'm John Marino, and we are produced by Sharc Creative on the beat in Westchester, and we are made possible by people like Robeson Oil, the house that service built by Hightower Westchester. Managing your wealth through a fiduciary standard by Michael Labriola, landscape design and construction of Armonk, and by Jaguar Land Rover of New Rochelle, White Plains, and Mount Kisco. Catch all of our Westchester, Rockland, Putnam, and Dutchess, Orange, and Fairfield County Talk Radio programming on our YouTube channel, Sharc Creative YouTube. And, you know, we have an app now. You can take us with you 24/7, anywhere and everywhere you go. It's called Westchester Talk. Download it